I got laid off, but don't worry, it's given me a lot of time to think about what's important to me. Professionally, I help robots see and interact with the world around us. And while that satisfies my professional curiosities, I realized that there was something missing in my life. And while I don't know what that is, we can figure it out together. We are ephemeral beings, and I'll be honest, I've had a lot of trouble coming to terms with that. Our mortal journey is brief, but the story lives on in those we leave behind. It's an endless dance of birth, growth, death, and rebirth. It's a reminder that even in the smallest moments of transformation, there's a larger story unfolding. And by learning about this process, I hope to learn to appreciate the little things. Today, I'll be doing a kimchi-inspired recipe using local ingredients and what's available. But before I turn on my music and go into autopilot, we first need to understand how fermentation works. Let's take a little bit of a field trip. Fermentation is a type of controlled decay, the ending of one life to fuel the beginning of another. Our project will be a perfect microcosm for one essential function of life: consumption. Bacteria breaks down sugars into lactic acid. Yeast metabolizes sugars to produce ethanol and carbon dioxide. And these life forms already colonize the produce in your supermarket. We just need to do 3 things to start the fermentation process. Slice the vegetables thinly to ensure penetration, and add a little salt to inhibit the wrong types of yeast and bacteria. Now, let it decay. We'll start by peeling the carrots, apples, and jicama.
All right, next we're gonna move on to the jalapenos, and then we're gonna take the seeds out. And then after that, we're gonna pretty much be ready to start with the blender. So, yeah. Okay, so next up is the cabbage.
We're going to quarter it, slice it into smaller, manageable pieces, and then we're going to peel it layer by layer. Yes, this is a tedious process, but I just want to make sure that the salt and spices are getting distributed equally throughout the entire mixture. We get it. For the chives, we're going to cut them horizontally up until the dark green portion that starts about here. Then we're going to switch to a diagonal cut for a more aesthetic appeal and a better mouthfeel. And finally, core and quarter the apples. Now that we're done prepping vegetables, we're moving on to the slicing section. We'll be using the blender to slice the carrots, apples, jicama, and jalapenos. Also, if you're enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe. combine all of your vegetables into one large bowl, or a couple of bowls if you have too much overflow. If you have more than one bowl with your vegetables, make sure you distribute the weight equally between them. We need to weigh the vegetable mix, then we need to calculate what 2% of that is. We'll then add enough salt to equal that measure. The salt will deter the type of life forms we don't want growing. It is time to get your hands dirty and distribute that salt throughout the mixture. While you're mixing, make sure to bruise the vegetables by squeezing the mixture as you mix. The bruising will help accelerate our process and make for a better texture. Now that we've got these softer, shiny vegetables, we're going to allow them to rest for n number of minutes. How will you know when it's ready? They'll be softer to the touch and the bowl will have a layer of liquid on the bottom as the salt has drawn out the water from the vegetables through osmosis. We're going to make a slurry from some sort of starch and water. I use tapioca starch. As far as measurements are concerned, they're not very strict. I used about a tablespoon of the starch to a cup of water. Not quite there. We are getting closer. There's not quite enough liquid, but they have deflated enough to where I want to bruise them a little bit more and also mix all of my vessels into one now that they can fit. I'm gonna mix the combination of the vegetables to ensure that I have an even distribution of not only the salt, but the vegetables as well. And then I'm going to take a little siesta and allow them to sit and rest. In order to understand how lacto-fermentation works, we need to start at the very beginning of creation itself. Kidding. These spices will serve as the flavoring for our paste mixture that we will eventually end up with. We'll need a whole clove of garlic, so let's prep that. Allowing the garlic cloves to sit in the boiling water will make the job infinitely easier. After soaking the cloves for a couple minutes, let's start peeling. We are going to add the garlic along with the ginger just roughly cut to the blender in a smaller bullet blender type setup. This is optional. I'm adding about 1/4 cup of my last batch's liquid to jumpstart the process, 1/4 cup of fish sauce, about 1/2 to 3/4 cup chili powder, and about 1/4 cup sugar. After the slurry has been allowed to cool, we're going to add that to the mixture. It is extremely slimy, so just be careful and try not to make a mess. Now that everything's in, we have the top on, we're gonna screw it in and blend. What I look for in the paste is about 10 times too strong of a flavor, but it should have all of the notes that you'd like, so it should taste yummy, just a little too strong. And then the consistency should be about the thickness of hummus.
All right, guys, it's the moment of truth. We have finished mixing it, so now it is about making sure that the flavor is good. Here is what it looks like. Let me grab just a leafy part like that, and then let's All right, so since we finally made it to the finish line, all we need to do is get the concoction that we made and we need to put it into a vessel. This thing is such a large vessel, and it also has a push down lid, like to push your vegetables down into the liquid while it's fermenting, to make sure that you're not gonna have problems. So once you fill the vessel, you put this down, and it has a little portion here that you can either plug or unplug, this little hole. While we are fermenting, we want to have that open. We want to press down on the vegetables, and then we want to lightly put the seal on, because through this process, you're gonna get some gas buildup as the sugars are digested and all of that. So if you close this airtight, you could end up with a really bad pressure situation depending on how long it is before you open it. I definitely like a lot of that lacto-fermentation. So honestly, I leave it for probably a week, maybe even more. It just depends on the batch. And once you have that process complete, then you can move it to the fridge. Super exciting.
Now, the process of decomposition begins. A tiny army of bacteria and fungi are feasting on the smorgasbord available for them. From the microscopic life forms to the macroscopic world, all of us are simply continuing our base functions: consume, reproduce, and pass. We often find ourselves caught up in the intricacies of modern life, worrying about deadlines and technology, and the seemingly cold immortality of our public world. Yet, amidst all of this, we remain warm, living, and mortal beings, deeply connected to the cycles of nature. That's it. That's what I was missing. A connection to something real and tangible. I needed to feel the warmth of life's natural rhythms. Fermentation, which is a process as old as time itself, is a reminder of our place in the grand tapestry of existence, where creation, transformation, and decay are intertwined, and every ending becomes a new beginning.